Hello and welcome back to another episode of Craven Some Raven. And in this episode, I'm going to be breaking down this upcoming game, this Sunday that we have versus the Houston Texans. Ravens versus Houston Texans, 1 o'clock Eastern. Should have been a night game, should have been flexed, right? But it doesn't matter. You see what the NFL kind of did. There's one marquee matchup in the morning game. That's Texans at Ravens. You look at the 4 o'clock game. Got Patriots, Eagles. Sunday night Bears, Rams. Big markets, so they're not really going to take that out. Chiefs, Chargers on the Monday night. I don't really think they can flex to the Monday night. If they can, it's probably going to be a rare instance when they do that. And the Chiefs are playing. They're not going to do that. So you move them. If they would have moved them, it would have been to the 4 o'clock time. But I feel like NFL realized they'd probably get more eyes on the game if they just have this Texans-Ravens game in the morning. Have all eyes on that game, as many as you can, because that is the only matchup really that's going to be big in that early time slot. It's like Jags, Colts, that's divisional, but Cowboys are always a big draw, but it doesn't really matter. This is the big game because there's a lot of big storylines. The big old topic is Texans at Ravens, right? This Sunday. Tickets will be half price because you'll only be using the edge of your seat. Um, so yeah, man, and that's true. You will only be using the edge of your seat because I see this being a shootout. I see it just being just like that Clemson versus Louisville game, but their teams will be similar, right? And it's that game came out afterwards. Everything came out. It's all right. Well, both these quarterbacks are good, and Lamar came out looking on top. And I was listening to Move the Sticks podcast earlier, and they did an episode, and they were talking about Lamar Jackson versus Deshaun Watson. And they went back, and they had the podcast at the time after that game, and they were talking about it. And the reason they're reviewing it is because they're talking about the concept of snapshot scouting. These are two former NFL scouts. Daniel Jeremiah was obviously with the Ravens and the Eagles, so he's got a big place in us Ravens hearts, right? Bucky Brooks, I think he's like Carolina Panthers, Seahawks, mostly an NFC guy, but two former scouts. So definitely, if you got a chance, give them a listen. They do a great job, especially when it comes to draft time. Very good insights. They do interviews with coaches. I guess this is just a podcast, an advertisement for them. But no, it's definitely a good listen. I've learned a lot through them. How they scout, how teams view things. Just doing. A lot of people, they do scouting from a third eye view, but people fail to realize that each team has an agenda. And so that's why when someone gets drafted out of nowhere, it's like, whoa, what the hell? Let's go, because that team values this thing differently. So especially when I do Ravens draft coverage, I try to identify what I think the Ravens are going to be looking for. And that way it narrows down kind of what I'm looking for in players and what I think the Ravens will do. But we'll definitely get to that on a later date. But getting back to kind of what they were talking about, and is snapshot scouting, and the concept is just seeing a game and just what are your thoughts on the player. And they're talking about this because they're talking about all the questions that came out with Lamar during that whole draft process, and it's how did we miss on this guy, or where were we wrong. And it's because in the draft process, you get to look at all the different games. You end up finding flaws. You end up really searching, going down a deep hole, going down the well, deep, hitting up their youth football coaches, and eventually, you hear, oh, he can't do this, he can't do that. But snapshot scouting is good because it's initial thoughts. What did you think? It's almost like when I do my game picks, right? It's just a gut feeling. I take into account everything I've seen before, but it's like, okay, instead of tinkering with it, I'm just going to pick this team. And mostly this year, I've come out on top, right? So far this season, obviously this past week was awful for me in week 10, but I'm still currently 90-57. So, still definitely above. But, usually your gut is right. And so the snapshot scouting, and they played back what they were saying about this game. And they came out saying what I feel like I've been saying about Lamar, a lot of Lamar hypers, is that even a word? People who enjoy Lamar's game say about Lamar Jackson. Way more super explosive, super talented, can make the throws, and we're just glowing, and they were just glowing about Lamar Jackson after this game, and barely even talked about Deshaun Watson. They had to mention because, like, oh yeah, we have to talk about Deshaun Watson. But Louisville lost the game, but they couldn't stop glowing about Lamar Jackson. And everything they're saying in this, post-game kind of review situation, this snapshot scout of a player, was almost 100% correct to what he's become in the NFL this year. That's kind of what I've done. I just do the eye test. Obviously, you see negatives. There's bad stuff here and there, but it's like overall, how good is this player? You got to look at how these players play, really. I mean, and then head to head, who's the guy you're talking about? And it was Lamar Jackson. And so throughout this whole year, Lamar Jackson has had these games. Goes up against Tom Brady. Oh, Lamar Jackson versus Tom Brady. Oh, going against Russell Wilson. Oh, Lamar Jackson versus Russell Wilson. Oh, Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. And most of those games, I think, even the Patrick Mahomes game, I'd say that the Chiefs won, right? But I still think there are a ton of people talking about Lamar Jackson. He is just an electrifying player, and people love talking about it, and he is going to be the face of this league. Now, I've said all this before, so none of this is a shock to people who have listened to me for a little bit, some time. I've been praising Lamar since probably the first or second episode of this podcast. I don't know if I even talked about the Ravens in the first episode, so that's why I say the second one. But, this is just the next chapter. He's got to go against Deshaun Watson, and that's the big talk. And you're seeing it all over the place. People are saying, who would you rather have, Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson? People keep saying Deshaun Watson. And, I'll break down the offense versus defense and, what I see out of this game, make some predictions and all that. But this is what everyone's talking about. So I want to talk about it, right? I got to get my voice out there, okay? Okay? So a lot of people are saying they'd rather have Deshaun Watson. Not everybody. But it's the same kind of thing that's happened week after week, where it's, okay, what Lamar Jackson is doing, even if they're not using the word sustainable, it's like, well, can he do this every week? Which is the definition of sustainable, but that's the debate. Like, man, eventually it's not going to work. He's not going to look as good. He's going to have to operate out of the pocket. But, what I'm saying, he does that, man. He kills it in the pocket. They start the game versus the Bengals and start out throwing, opening up the run. And they didn't even run the ball that well. They only got 130 yards, which sounds like it's a pretty good day, but not for the Ravens. I mean, Lamar Jackson can throw the goddamn ball. And, you look at the stats of Deshaun versus Lamar, and it's, Deshaun has better passing numbers, but Lamar has better running numbers. So that's the narrative. You look at the stats, and that's the narrative. Oh, so Deshaun Watson is a better passer, and Lamar Jackson is a better runner. To me, I don't know if that's 100% true. I think Lamar Jackson is the better runner for sure, but I don't know if you can just declare that Deshaun Watson is the better passer. Maybe that's what the stats say, but I've watched all of Lamar's games, and he's a pretty good passer. He makes the right decision, and that is almost the most important thing when it comes to the quarterback position. You can talk about arm talent, accuracy, touch time, anticipation, all that shit. I think, with like arm talent, right? When it comes to like power and accuracy, I think there's a certain threshold you have to hit, right? You got to be at least this good if you want to make it in this league. And I think Lamar Jackson hits that threshold. But where he far exceeds the threshold is his decision making. I can't say decision. Decision. Apparently I can't say it. But that's where he's thrived this year. I think he's only had one bad pick. Whereas, like, he just didn't see the guy, and it's like, man, shouldn't have thrown that one. You want to have that one back. But he protects the football. I know he has 5 interceptions, but I talked about this before. That Steelers game, he had 3 interceptions. One was off the turf, and it's like, that's not an interception. The other one, clear and obvious pass interference, but the NFL isn't calling it nowadays. In the Browns games, there's pass interference. You can't call that. Or it hits the receivers in the hands and it gets tipped up. It's like you can't really blame him 100%. And obviously, I haven't seen Deshaun Watson as much as I've seen Lamar. So all this, take it with a grain of salt, right? Get Salt Bay up in here. Oh, I guess you can't see me. I'm doing the Salt Bay, but bring in Salt Bay and take it with some salt. Because obviously, I'm a Ravens fan. This is why you're listening. You're craving some Raven. And I just don't understand this narrative of Deshaun Watson being a better passer. I don't see it. Because most of the argument is just it's versus Lamar Jackson. He is just a better passer than Lamar Jackson. When has Deshaun Watson gotten a perfect passer rating, right? Has he done that yet this year? I don't think so. It's not to say he's bad at passing. No, he's very good at passing the ball. And why I'm kind of nervous for this game. But at the same time, I think Lamar Jackson is just an all-around better player. Everything he brings to the table. And everything I've said for the past 1,000 podcasts I've had. I'm probably close to 100, if not past 100. I don't know that for sure. I'll have to look into that. But this is my 100th episode then. Awesome, we made it. We did it. Yeah, we did it. But this whole debate, comparing the two, I get it. That's what people love doing. Two MVP candidates. I think Lamar is definitely viewed more as an MVP than Deshaun Watson. But then you go and hear, what is that? Speak for yourself. And they're saying, Deshaun Watson is a better MVP candidate, and he's gonna he's gonna push himself more into the MVP race after this game. And it's like, y'all keep saying this about Lamar Jackson, and one thing I did like about that segment was Whitlock, which is what the hell? What the hell is going on? I think the reasons we've hated on Whitlock is because of his trash takes on Lamar. But I think that's just because he never really watched the guy. He's going off of what other people are saying, seeing the highlights, and forming his opinion that way. And after him obviously watching Lamar, his tune has changed completely. And I've talked about this, all the different national media members saying one thing about Lamar, and then they actually watch a game with him, and they change their tune about 180. Man, this kid's the real deal. Man, this kid's legit. He can throw now, but that running ability, you can't lay a hand on him. And so what he was saying, if I didn't forget it just now, god damn it, must have CTE. I must have gotten that Rudolph special. Must have gotten hit with the helmet. Can't remember what I was about to say. Damn it. God damn it. This is why sometimes it's good to have notes when you do these podcasts, right? Isn't that a good idea? I could pause it, right? I could say, oh, here we go. This is what I was talking about. But no, I'm just going to try and think and talk at the same time because Whitlock was saying something, and I'm trying to remember. He was talking about Lamar Jackson. Fuck. I'm going to have to pause this. Damn it. Okay, we got there. Jesus Christ, I finally remembered it. I was about to just rewatch the whole thing. I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'll remember. I got it. So, they're having this discussion about Deshaun Watson being a better MVP candidate, and all of them pick Deshaun Watson, and then Whitlock's like, but he's saying at a certain point, this guy keeps doing this stuff, and it's like, I'm going to come in here on Monday, and we're going to be saying the same thing that we say every single week. Man, this Lamar Jackson kid, he can throw the ball, and it surprises him each and every week. Before the game, he says all this stuff about Lamar Jackson, and people on his show say all this stuff, and then each and every week, just like not just him, a lot of different people, not including myself because I see this shit coming, but they come out of it saying, "Damn, Lamar Jackson doing it yet again." And so it's like the narrative keeps just recycling itself, and it's like, all right, come on. Get a new narrative. Like, how many times does Lamar have to prove himself? How many of these new age awesome quarterbacks does he have to play coming out looking like the better player for people to just say, all right, he is the better player? Now, it's not eventually it's going to happen, right? And, I'm almost tired of talking about it. In all honesty, I am tired about it. But it's going to keep coming up, and the classic cliche, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the haters, they're going to get more attention from me. I don't want to live my life in that sort of vein, but you know what? It still does trigger me. Like, bro, I've been on this. I've been saying all this great stuff about Lamar, how it's unstoppable, how he's going to be the MVP, how he might be the Hall of Fame. That one has yet to be seen, but it's never too early to make predictions. So it's it's just tiring, man. So I'll just move on to the actual game, our offense versus their offense versus our defense. But let's continue with Lamar. Let's talk about our offense versus the Texans defense. Now the Texans, they have apparently the number 3 rushing defense going against the best rushing offense in the league, probably historic if they do break that record. Now I think part of that stat with the Texans being the number 3, I think I think a lot of it's true. I think they do have the ability to stop the run pretty well. It might be the toughest run defense we've played this year, off the top of my noggin. But, people are saying the same stuff about the Patriots. They take away what you do best. And they tried. They tried to stop the run. And they couldn't. They failed. Lamar Jackson at this moment is an unstoppable force, it seems. And people are seeing it. And it's about goddamn time. Now, I'm gonna look up, who the Texans have played, because sometimes, like I always say, stats can be deceiving, right? They have the number 3 rushing defense. Now, is that because they actually have the number 3 rushing defense, or is it because every time they've played somebody, they're up, and so a team decides not to run, right? If you're like, it's similar to the Chiefs, right? They have a very good rushing defense. Why is that? It's not because they're great at defending the run. It's just because they get up early in most games, and so teams just abandon the run. So it's not like a causation. It's more just looking at it like, oh, well, this is what happens. It's not because they're great at stopping the run. It's because of who they've played and the way, like, the games have gone, the way the scripts kind of go out, the way the offense ends up being called for the other team. So I'm going to look up their schedule. Texans 2019. Professional over here. Looking it up on the live, even though we're not live. Okay. All right, let's look at this. So Jaguars 26-3. The Jaguars are a great rushing offense. 26-3. You're going to abandon the run. And I remember that game. They were passing all over the place. Their defense came up huge in that game. Got a bunch of turnovers towards the end there. Texans versus Raiders. They won that game. The Raiders are a pretty good rushing team. I'm not seeing any stats. Let's see how many they rushed for. So Josh Jacobs gets 66 yards. Not bad. They lost to the Colts. Let's see, the Colts did how well? Wow, they only got 44 rushing yards. So yeah, maybe they are that good. Maybe what I'm saying doesn't make sense. Up against Falcons, Chiefs, they don't run. The Falcons are trash. But the Falcons put up 32 points on them. Chargers, kind of trash. Panthers, that was a low-scoring game. But either way, I think this Ravens team is going to have more of a struggle. I think running the ball, maybe they only get 120 yards. Most of it being from Lamar. I can see that. 120, that's a bad rushing game for the Ravens. That's how good they've been. You just can't fully stop it. The way this offense is run, the way Greg Roman is calling it, they are just so multiple in the looks they give. Not only the looks, but what they can do out of those looks. And it just causes problems for the defense. I was listening to O'Brien. What's his first name? Bill O'Brien. the Texans head coach, and he was talking about this upcoming game. And man, just I implore you guys to go look up on YouTube and watch his interview because he's talking, throwing out stats that not even I know about this Ravens team. The guy has definitely, for 2 weeks straight, been watching this Ravens team. He's dropping players' names, he's dropping stats, the way they use them, and he's got that look in his eye like, yeah, I've been studying for 2 weeks and I still don't know how to stop them. He had that look in his eye, and the way he was praising them, it was a thing of beauty. And I'm sure coaches do this all the time, right? They praise the opposition. That's nothing new. It's nothing crazy. It's just, the look in his eye. And I've never really listened to Bill O'Brien speak, and I know he gets a lot of flack, but he seems like he's a good coach. It looks like he really knows his shit. I mean, he's a head coach, right? He's supposed to. But I mean, sometimes you see and listen to head coaches, and you're like, oh, you're just a fucking. You're a bum. You're not really understanding what this is. But Bill O'Brien, yeah, he seems like a sharp dude. He seems like someone I would hang out with. He really seems like he knows his stuff. And I enjoyed listening to him talk about the Ravens because he had nothing but glowing remarks. And it's not just like, oh, we're going to praise him, blah, blah, blah. He was going into detail. It's definitely a good listen. And he's got a ton of pressure on him now because they don't even have a GM. He is now the acting GM, so he's got a lot of responsibilities. So a lot of this game really does fall on him. I get it. He's a head coach, and it's kind of like a dumb statement what I just said. But I feel some head coaches, like even like John Harbaugh, right? He's not a coordinator. He's just a guy that leads the team and says, all right. He delegates. I feel like Bill O'Brien. He kind of has to do a lot of stuff himself. And so he's tasked himself with trying to figure out this Ravens team, and the way he's talking, it seems like he still doesn't have an answer. I think that's the way this game is going to go. The Texans won't have an answer for our offense. Now, when we get to our defense versus their offense, I think it might be a similar story. I see this as a shootout, and we'll get to predictions. I'll give you my score predictions. You just hold on a minute. We're only 22 minutes in, baby. I did have to pause it once, which I'm kind of mad about because I couldn't remember what the fuck Whitlock says. I think, you speak Whitlock and all of a sudden you turn into the guy. What am I saying? What am I talking about? Does this make sense? Should I even be in this game? Makes you question everything. Yeah. So, yeah, this Texans defense is definitely going to have a tall task ahead of them. Now, they have a good run defense, like I was saying. So they stopped the run, let's say. That's great. Lamar Jackson isn't a great passer. But, oh, wait, he is. He's got 2 perfect passer ratings in a season. The only other person to do that is freaking Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, it's a entire narrative. The guy can throw. And so the Texans, their secondary is not good at all. They are bottom of the league. I think like number 29. And once again, that could be, check the stats and see who they played. But you know what? I'm not going to do that again because that didn't really work out for my narrative last time. So I'm not going to do that this time. But it should tell you the way the Texans feel about their secondary, where they pick up Vernon Hargreaves, a guy who was a high draft pick, right? So obviously he's going to get a second chance no matter what. But he was cut by the Buccaneers, a team that desperately needs corners. And he couldn't make it on that squad. So the Texans are so desperate they're gonna take this guy, this bust of a pick, and say, hey, maybe this can help us stop Lamar. Maybe this can help us stop this Ravens offense. Let's see how it works out, buddy. Let's see how it goes. Because this Ravens offense hasn't been stopped all freaking year. You can point to the Cleveland game. They only put up 25 points. But that's like their worst outing. I mean, that's the worst game they've had, and they have moved the ball and scored points. Especially, even Bill O'Brien, one of the stats that he came up with is like in 8 of their 9 games, they've scored on the first drive. And that's beautiful, man. It's because those plays are scripted, and when you don't know what's coming and the Ravens are like, this is what we're doing, you can't stop it. The option with Lamar, to run or pass or, run someone else, the options, it's honestly a thing of beauty. It's an impossible offense to stop, and that's why they've been, the highest scoring offense, I think, since week 1. I think they got, overtaken at some point, but they are now back to the first overall, and that's not a fluke, right? you don't lead a statistical category for almost the whole season and it being a fluke. You know, it's like eventually the excuse of, well, who have they played? It's like, we've played a lot of good fucking teams, and eventually it's like, well, this is just the way the team is. People are coming around to that, but it's still a question that gets asked. And so I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a huge passing day. With how terrible their corners are for the Texans, I think they just go ahead and start throwing the ball all around. Spread them out. Doesn't matter even how it looks. I think they're just going to shred up their secondary. And with doing that, that will honestly open up the run even more. You just go Lamar Jackson by himself in the backfield. Spread them out. Shred them down the field. Eventually through that game, they're going to change up their coverage. They're going to have to go man. They're going to try to do things differently. That's just going to leave it open for Lamar to have a couple big scrambles. I think Lamar gets close to 100 yards scrambling, and I think he throws for 300 yards. I don't think the Texans are going to be able to stop it. And I think it's going to be a repeat of what we saw in 2016, except now Lamar is going to have a better team than Deshaun Watson had. This is like a reverse role of that game a little bit. You had Deshaun Watson with, the national championship, the national champions at the time, that team around him, versus Lamar and a team that they shouldn't have even been ranked at that time. I mean, how many Louisville players are now in the NFL? What, Jair Alexander? Maybe someone else. But everyone he was playing with is not in the NFL. A lot of the players that Deshaun was playing with are in the NFL. So we saw them go toe-to-toe, blow for blow, and it was a great offensive day, and Lamar fell short because his teammate didn't dive for the first down. And Lamar overshadowed Deshaun. That's why he beat him out in the Heisman Trophy voting. So, let's see this game again, but the teams are a little bit more equal, if not the Ravens have a better team around Lamar. How bad does this get? I got my score prediction. I'll give that to you. But I want to move to the Texans offense versus the Ravens defense. Because the Texans have a pretty good offense. And most of their success comes off the big play. It comes not from grinding out drives. It comes from Deshaun Watson staying in the pocket, getting loose, throwing the ball with 3 people on his ankles, and throwing a touchdown. I've said this multiple times. I've said it on Joe Nubo's podcast. I talked to Sonny about this from SCG Sports. Check him out. Other Ravens YouTubers, yeah, I'm sure you know who they are. If you know who I am, you know who they are. And I was on Joe Nubo's podcast, did a little guest thing. I was on for like maybe 5 minutes or so. And we were talking about Deshaun Watson, and he scares us, right? And I'm saying, this is what I said on there. It's, Deshaun Watson, the guy got kicked in the eye. And was making sure, according to him, that he was making sure his eye was still in a socket. And then he throws a touchdown. Right now, if I were to get an eyelash in my eye, I would have to pause this podcast. I can't do this right now. I got an eyelash in my eye. So that's the kind of guy that Deshaun Watson is. So he's a pirate, right? He's got his eye patch on, even though he doesn't have an eye patch. But he's down an eye. He got an injured eye. He's a pirate. Let's make him walk the plank. What, son? What, son? What you want, son? How bright is your future? What's the wattage? What's your watt, son? I'll work on that. It's pretty good though, not bad, right? So yeah, it's gonna be tough to get to him, right? We don't have the best pass rushers in the game, but I got a theory about this. With the way the NFL is going, much has been talked, and a lot of the narrative around this game is kind of about the new mobile quarterback and how that's where the NFL is going. That's kind of where everyone's going to be moving to. You need a guy who's elusive and mobile in the back. Whether he's a runner or not, he has to be able to, move around the pocket and get loose at some point, just because offensive line isn't the best, isn't what it used to be. Like we're gonna have to get to him, and it's gonna be tough. So, what the hell? Oh my god. Sorry, I had to pause this. My boss sent me a video. Oh my god. So you think you're tough, and it's a video of this guy just getting his balls stomped out, but on purpose. Oh my god, I forgot everything that I was talking about. I should not have clicked on that. I should have waited till after the podcast. God damn. Oh, Jesus Christ. Balls are in my stomach now. That looks so painful. Not like stepping on it like, oh, haha, like a weird fetish thing, even though this is definitely a weird fetish thing. Stomping. Heel to balls. Like he places them on a hard surface, and she just, boom. Jesus Christ, what the fuck was I talking about? Holy shit. Yeah, that was my boss who sent that. So, yeah, fuck. So, yeah, football, huh? How about that? The This is turning out not to be the best podcast. Mine's all over the place. Um but yeah, Deshaun Watson, right? Okay, so he's tough to bring down. And the way they know how to feel good. Okay, yeah, I got it back. So what I'm getting to is that a lot of people say we need a pass rusher. Ravens need a pass rusher. I get that, but I think as Ravens fans we're kind of mistaken, and I think the way the NFL's going is changing the way I think maybe Eric DeCosta is trying to decide how to build the defensive line. I think we're mistaking getting sacks with we need a pass rusher, because I think with the way the NFL's going, right, with these mobile quarterbacks, you know, you can't win off the edge with one or two guys. In my opinion, I haven't fully fledged this thought out. Literally just thought about it earlier today. I think you just need a group of guys who can kind of Mike Myers their way into the backfield. You can't let any gaps open, because that's where these running quarterbacks hurt you. And you're not going to get to them as quick, but you can just push the pocket, keep them in front of you. Just keep them in front of you, and just hope that your corners can cover on the back end. And I've talked about this before, build back to front. And it kind of goes with that. If your corners can cover and you just slowly push the pocket back, make that quarterback uncomfortable to where he's got to make something happen, and you just have him covered on all sides, just Mike Myers your way into the sack. Make the quarterback kind of try to spin out and run into a defender. We've seen that with Lamar, right? Whereas people around him, he's like, oh shit, I don't have time. Let me spin out of this and get out of here. But he spins right into a guy. I think you got to Mike Myers it. So when it comes to we need a pass rusher. No, we need guys who can do a multitude of things, where they can stand up their guy and push back. Haven't fully fledged it out. I'd love to hear someone else's opinion on that, but I think it's kind of like I think Eric DeCosta's kind of already done that. Getting Jalen Ferguson, right. He's a pass rusher, but he's not this guy that is going to spin move and possibly take himself out of the play, because these elite pass rushers, right? What do they get? Two sacks a game if they're good. I mean, that's a good game, right? 2 sacks in one game. These elite pass rushers, and that's the most production you can get. No, you can get that if you get a group of guys who can just Mike Myers their way back, right? So that's my opinion. Blitzing and coaching scheme, I think, is more important than you need a great pass rusher. No, we just need guys who can be productive on the defensive line. We don't need just a guy who just does one thing, which is rush the passer. And that's what a pass rusher is. So maybe, when people talk about we need a pass rusher, maybe they're talking about what I'm saying. But, I just don't like the phrase, we need a pass rusher. No, we need sacks. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we need a pass rusher. Jihad Ward, he's gotten 2 sacks now, right? Is he a pass rusher? No, he's a defensive lineman who knows how to get to the passer. So, yeah. And it's what Deshaun Watson, what we're going to have to do with him, because his off schedule throws, that's how the Texans have thrived. That's how they've won all of their games. It's just through the hands of Deshaun Watson doing something crazy. He reminds me of a more elusive, like young Ben Roethlisberger, right? You remember all those games where you got Terrell Suggs laying on you, got Haloti Ngata laying on you, and he still throws the ball and completes it to AB. It's like, damn it, what the fuck? How did he get that off? That's what Deshaun Watson does. I think the offense as a whole around him, Maybe it's good, but it's not, it's not elite, right? I just think it's Deshaun Watson. What he does is elite. Being able to get out of those sacks and getting it to his guys. And we got to watch out for his guys, right? Speaking about their running game, they have Carlos Hyde. They have the other guy from the Browns. They got two guys from the Browns. Whatever his fucking name is. Duke Johnson. I remember Duke Johnson when he was on the Browns, and he would always kill us, and it always surprised me. It's like, why don't the Browns use Duke Johnson more often? He's killing us. He's obviously the best running back, at least the most elusive one back there, and he can catch the ball. So we got to watch out for that. But then they're wide receivers. I don't know if Will Fuller's going to be playing, but DeAndre Hopkins, he's that dude. I just keep thinking about the last time we played him. You remember, by the end of the game, the dude needed a new jersey. It was ripped up. We had to hold him that much, and he still got his. And I think, he's gonna get his again. I think Deshaun Watson, he's gonna catch a couple touchdowns. I think he's gonna have 100 yards. I think it's gonna be a bad day for the Ravens secondary. Maybe on the individual matchup. I think maybe it's just going to be a good day for Hopkins. But I still think this Ravens defense, the way they've done things, this has been an opportunistic defense. This hasn't been the lights out, shut them down defense of last year. But this defense has gotten their hands on the ball. They've gotten turnovers, and they've returned those turnovers for touchdowns more often than not. I think more of their turnovers have been touchdowns than not, which is crazy. And, I want to be able to say I expect that to continue. But that's not something, and I've talked about this, I think even last episode, that you can't expect turnover production. You can't bank on that because there's so much that goes into each turnover. It's not something that you can plan for. Now, you can plan for, hey, our defense is better in this area versus this area of their offense. You can plan on that, right? You can say our scheme is better, this and that. But when it comes to turnover, which is what most of our defensive success has come from, you can't bank on that. You can't guarantee, we're going to get this many and we're going to do it this way. There's just so much that goes into it. You can't bank on it, right? Just saying the same thing 3 times in a row. But if we can, that's only going to help us win even more. And we have to watch out for the wide receivers. But I think, you let Deshaun Watson throw with people around his ankles. Eventually, he's going to throw one to us. You keep just heaving it up for the fences. And he'll get us one. Deshaun Watson will give us one. Like I said, with the running game, they've run the ball pretty well. I think they're top 5 in rushing, but we brought in some guys. We had an injury with Michael Pierce, and they put Dalen Mack on injured reserve. So that's our reserve guy now out, and Michael Pierce, our big run stuffer. And a lot of our defense is predicated off of what Brandon Williams and Michael Pierce can do, because these guys, they require 2 people at all times. So that is 4 offensive linemen or 4 people on the offense accounting for these 2 guys, which lets everything else open. So they bring in Pico de Gallo, Penco Breadcrumbs. The guy from the Bengals, he has long hair. I remember seeing him at Cincy all the time. We got him, he's a veteran. And we also got this guy Ellis. I guess his nickname is Jelly. I guess his last name Ellison, so Jelly, I don't know. It makes sense. But these guys, they're run stuffers. They are clear and obviously here because we have a hole now because of that injury. And that's one thing I love about Eric Costa. He's like, okay, we have an issue. Boom, here's these 2 guys. It seems like he has a plan for everything. All right, if we're going to get an injury here, if we're going to get an injury there, these are the guys we call and we're going to bring in. Because these guys are obviously just run stuffers. That is their job. And he brings in 2 of them. Obviously, 2 of them are gone. Now bring 2 back in. So I have to see that. I don't know how much protection we're going to get. But, what did we think was going to happen with LJ Fort and Josh Bynes? Did we think anything of that, right? As Ravens fans, we're like, oh, here comes the saviors. But what the fuck happened? That's exactly what happened. They were the saviors of the defense. Once they came in, everything's turned around. A lot might go into that. There's, different opponents, different schemes. There's a lot that goes into it. But it still stands that once they came in, the defense got better. Is that causation? I don't know. But, so who knows what kind of production we'll get out of these guys. Hopefully they can come in, get a few tackles, hold up in the run game, cause them to try to break it outside, thus running into our linebackers. Hopefully that will help us continue, having free guys in the back end. Allow our corners and linebackers to do what they do best, which is get to the ball. Cover their man, get to the ball. So Deshaun Watson, man, he makes me nervous. Like I started with, this is the battle, right? And this is going to be Clemson versus Louisville. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm confident in that. So that tells me, the way I've been picking these NFL games, at least last week, it's probably going to be the exact opposite. I went 3-10 last week. 3-10. But that was the weirdest, That was the weirdest week. I doubt anybody picked like 8 of those games right. I doubt anybody went, what would that be? 8-5? I doubt anybody did better than 8-5. I doubt anybody did better than 5 whatever that would be, 5-8. I doubt anybody went 5-8 in that week. There were so many upsets, so many weird shits that went on. Speaking of the Browns. No, I'm not talking about the Browns. Even though that game last night, Thursday Night Football, Myles Garrett with the yeet of the century, let me just hit him with this helmet. Straight up assault. Go ahead and get yourself suspended for the rest of the year. Or indefinitely. Thank you for that. Watching that game, somehow the Ravens won. I don't know how that happened. Obviously, I know how it happened. Because of that dumbass fight at the end, but it's like, what the hell? You never like seeing 2 AFC North rivals go against it, because it's like, damn, can they both lose? And somehow they both lost. The Browns won, but they lost. Like, just yes. 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 So yeah, this game, prediction-wise, my score prediction, I'm going to say Ravens win this one 42 to 33. I don't know if there's a defensive touchdown in there or not, but I think Lamar Jackson is going to have one hell of a day where he throws for 300 and runs for close to 100, in and around that 100 mark. Because like I said, I think, with the Texans defense, they're not very good against the pass, so I think Marquise Brown has a big game. I think he gets 2 touchdowns, 2 long bombs, and then he kind of does his thing where he's barely on the field, gets 2 explosive plays, and that's kind of his day. Or he ends up going over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, like 3 catches, like a real Randy Moss type day. And I think that allows Lamar Jackson to get some scrambles. It makes the Texans change up their coverage, go a little bit more man, and to try to prevent that, and then the Ravens just spread them out, and Lamar takes a couple. You're good at defending the run, but you're not. No one's good at defending the scramble. No one in the league, Lamar Jackson or not, is good at defending the scramble, because the scrambles, hey, you got it covered in the back end. Your guys are 20 yards downfield. Well, here goes the quarterback. It's like an automatic 10 yards, and with Lamar's skill, it's like an automatic 25. A little bit extreme, but you know what I'm saying. So this is definitely the marquee matchup of the morning games, and I can't fucking wait for this game. It's another Lamar Jackson versus this guy. How many times does he have to keep proving it against these other quarterbacks, coming out looking like the better player, to where, it just stops. I don't think it ever will. Not until he wins the Super Bowl, which is what Lamar always talks about, which is cool. I love hearing him say that. Got to get that ring. He wants to be the GOAT, which is cool. I'd expect nothing less from the man. But yeah, man, I think, Marquise Brown with the 2 touchdowns. I think Mark Ingram, I don't think he has a big day. Maybe he gets 50 yards, but gets like 2 touchdowns, goal lines. He gets up to 10 on the year. I think Mark Andrews gets one. I think maybe Earl Thomas gets a pick. Deshaun Watson's just going to throw it up at a certain point, maybe like a late interception. I think Pat Ricard goes off, has another good game. Yeah, I'm excited. With the Texans offense, I want to see Marlon Humphrey on Will Fuller, and he might not even play. So Will Fuller might not even be in the game. It's just I think he's their deep threat, and they've won a lot of games with him. Just throw it up to Will Fuller, and anytime Will Fuller's been in the game, Watson and Fuller have a connection. It's like the Lamar Marquise Brown connection. When he's in, he's killing it. So yeah, put our speed guy on there, speed guy. I trust Marlon Humphrey. He's one of the best corners in the game. So I believe in our guys. So, yeah, man, I can't wait for this game. Deshaun Watt, son? Versus Lamar motherfucking Jackson. From La Maryland. I guess he's from La Florida. But he's going to win the La MVP. Anyways, man, I think that might do it. I'm going to try and record my picks episode probably tomorrow. I know it's kind of like on a Saturday. People aren't really doing too much with football on that day, but I'll do my predictions. I predicted the Steelers to win, so I got that one wrong. So that will be reflected in how I'm feeling about these game picks for sure, especially after what happened last week. Hopefully it's not a big upset week, but look out for that to come out tomorrow. I got a suggestion from somebody that I'm probably going to do an instant reaction after the game. So hopefully I can be hyped up and have a nice instant reactions, won't get too angry. I've thought about doing that, right after doing a real quick, short, like instant thoughts on the game type thing, and then kind of review it in total, kind of after the fact. But, kind of nervous, like, with the emotions in the air, even after a big win or a terrible loss, I'll say some crazy shit that just doesn't make sense, and I'll be all over the place because I'm a highly emotional guy when it comes to football. This is like the most even-keeled podcast I think I've ever had, and this is a big game too, so this is going to be huge. I genuinely think that the Texans are a tougher matchup than the Patriots, and I think it's just Deshaun Watson. And it makes me think of what are other fan bases thinking when they have to face Lamar, right? I think it's the same exact thing. You're like, damn, X Factor, man. He is an X Factor, and he's done it before. So we will see what happens. But like I said, 42-33, I think this offense just gets rolling. I think our defense is going to have a tough time also stopping Watson, but I think, we get a turnover here and there, capitalize on those turnovers, maybe not a touchdown on defense, but maybe good field position. Lamar goes down and scores. So we end up getting the better of them, winning the turnover battle and thus winning the game. I think that's kind of what it's going to be. You win the turnover battle in this game, I think you get the win. You could say that about most games because the turnover battle, that is the most indicative stat of wins. If you're going to look at one stat and what correlates to a win, it's turnovers. So you can really say that about any game, but, I think this can be a score-for-score type situation. I think it's different from, like, a Chiefs game. I think Lamar has finally hit his stride, and he's going to continue that stride. He will not break his stride. He will spin out of that stride and go on a new course to victory. So, with that being said, thank you for listening. Drop a like, comment, all that fun stuff. Give me a review on iTunes, all the good stuff. If you listen this far ahead, hopefully you've done that already. So thank you for listening, and go Ravens.